Posting tips and how to's might be making you look smart online, but it might be killing your client pipeline. So, if your cousin from Kansas is your top commenter, this episode is for you. And I'm going to be a little vulnerable here and say that this episode is actually for me too, because we've all been told to post value online. And as experts, that's pretty much the easy part, right? We just talk about what we know. But teaching by itself isn't going to get you clients. So today I want to dive into what is going on or what I think is going on. And then I did some research and I came up with a fix for it that you can inject into your own content plan and that I'm actually been really working really very hard to inject into my own content just in the last few weeks. So, look, I know you're working really hard on this stuff. So it's super frustrating when what you're putting out there isn't getting like DMs, it's not getting the downloads that you're looking for. And here's what I think is going on. I think your teaching content is probably great, but it needs to be balanced out with something that I'm thinking about as connection content. So, what the heck is connection content, and what do you need to do to make some? Well, I'm Laura Zovelson, and this is the Gen Expert Show, where I help experts like coaches and consultants build a revenue engine. So all that work you're doing to market your business actually works. So what I do is I help you put the business pieces in place so you can make enough money over the long term so you never, ever even have to think about getting a job again. So as coaches and consultants, we've all been kind of sold this idea that if we put enough value content out there, people are going to find us and say, hey, that person really knows what they're talking about. And so I'm going to hire them. So my content is full of how to and tips and value. And I'm going to bet yours is too, right? Here's what I'm learning that kind of content does great on kind of the know and trust parts of the know like trust continuum, but it's not so great at getting people to like you and connect with you. So before you get people commenting and DMing, this is all a one-way conversation. And that value content doesn't give people a chance to know you and find out who you really are. So I think we need to intentionally create content that connects with that ideal client and make them feel like I know her, I like her, and she really gets me. And I think people want to feel like they have something in common with you. That's going to create that pull to get them to actually take the next steps with you. So, look, I'm not saying that we need to stop creating value content. In fact, my whole thought leadership strategy is about how to build content around what you know. And that I think it's not enough. I'm finding out that's not enough. So here's my own experience with this. And this happened like 2 weeks ago. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And like you, I post a lot of teaching and coaching posts, right? How to find your niche, how much to charge, how to create your signature program, all that stuff. Well, when I did a content review of the last 6 months of my posts, I realized my engagement is crappy. And when I went looking for a pattern, what I saw was that pretty much all of my content was teaching or promoting my lead magnet or my program. So individually, the content was fine. My reach was okay. But when I looked at them all together, I saw that there just wasn't a lot of me in there. And so I took a chance. I created another post and not even a reel, it was a static post. And I told a story. And I told the story of when I went on my very last interview ever. So this was about 5 years ago, and I was just coming off the sale of a startup I was working at, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And what I really love is helping people start businesses. So I was interviewing for a job where I was going to build a startup accelerator inside this larger company. And I'm talking to this guy who's the CFO, COO of the company. And he asked what I was doing in my previous job. And my previous job was being a CFO, COO. And so basically his exact job. And I told him that. And then he said it. He looks at me and he goes, well, are you even qualified to do that? Well, let me translate what I think he was saying. You're a woman in midlife. How could you possibly know what you're doing? And, you know, I could have shot back, and I wish sort of part of me wishes I had shot back and said, well, I raised 1.5 million in venture capital. I built a brand strategy to over $1 million. I taught entrepreneurship at UNC Chapel Hill and Elon University. I helped package and sell the SaaS company I was just at. But I didn't say that. Smiled, shook his hand, walked out, got in my car, driving down the Embarcadero in San Francisco. If you know it, it kind of runs right along the water there. And I'm stopping at a red light and I look out over the water and that's when I thought to myself, I am never going on another interview again. I'm done with this shit. And I haven't. Because I decided that I was just done waiting for someone else to let me do what I really love. So anyway, I told that story in a post, and 48 hours later, it had 10x the engagement of anything I had put out in the last 6 months. So here's my takeaway from that. I think we need to be making what I'm calling vibe posts, and we need to make them an integrated and intentional part of our content strategy. I think these vibe posts are how you let people connect with you as a person, and so they see you behind your teaching content, right? So these are these posts are the ones that say, this is who I am, this is what I care about, here's how I got here. And yeah, that is my cat that keeps walking across the keyboard while I'm on Zoom, right? We say we're real people and we have real lives, just like the clients that we're trying to attract. And so yeah, the content doesn't teach, but it does help make that connection. So I did some research for us and I looked at the accounts that got great engagement on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And so here are some ideas that I got for vibe posts. You could talk about why you do what you do, right? And if you want to be open about it, you can talk about like what happens when that makes you think about quitting, because we've all been there. Okay. Um, what do you do when you hear your favorite song? Maybe a story from your past that shapes your approach. Maybe your opinion or your hot take on something that's going on in your industry, especially if it goes like against the grain, right? Um, your personal rituals or quirks, like maybe you do your best thinking when you're in your shower. Share that. Even what you're reading right now. And I'm gonna be honest with you, like the trashier, the better. Because I don't think it has to be deep. I think it just has to be real. Because the more real you are, I do think that that's what lets people like you more. And I think that is what's going to bring your clients closer to working with you. So let's talk about what we can all do to take some action on this, what I learned, right? Here's the challenge I'm giving myself, and I want to give it to you too. One vibe post a week. So that's it. I don't think we need to make this harder than it has to be. I think one way to think about this, or one way I'm thinking about this, is captured versus created, right? So if you're in the car, shoot it in the car. If you're out taking a walk, like take a quick selfie, even if you're not wearing makeup. If your dog is like walks through the shot, post the one with your dog walking through the shot. I promise it's going to do better. I mean, this is really what my research is showing me. So anyone who watches this show knows that I'm okay with done is better than perfect. But I realize that like that's hard for a lot of people, especially if you're just starting getting out there and being seen on social media. So it's really okay to start small. Look, you know, we're not influencers. I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm not really here to get brand deals or go viral. What I want to do is put what I know out into the world. And if it helps someone else grow their business, that actually has all the meaning in the world for me. But I would also like to have like a robust client group, that's going to help me stay in business for the long term. Because as I talk about, if I stay in business, that's going to let me help more people and get more financial success into the hands of women. And that's really what I'm all about. So, I think that again, it's okay to start small. Given where the algorithms are, I really think if you can get comfortable with posting these vibe reels, this vibe content as a vertical video, that's going to be your best bet and is going to get you more reach. But hey, that LinkedIn thing I did, that was a post. So, do what you're comfortable with. I think the most important thing is that you just do it. So, I gave you a few ideas for what you might, post as a vibe post earlier in the video. But I know that this can be a sticking point, right? Because if you're like me, it's super easy to know what you want to teach. But you asked me to talk about myself. massive writer's block. So what I did was I curated a list for myself based on what I saw other people doing out there, and I want to share it with you. So I made the thought leadership content generator, as you know, that helps you turn your unique approach or your program idea into kind of endless content ideas, right? I show you how to do that. I added a secret section in there, and it's called vibe posts. And there's prompts for exactly this kind of connection content. So you can share the stories and you can build that connection and kind of pull back the curtain on what it's like to work with you. So, sneakily, I just took away the excuse that you had that you don't know what to post. So now all that's left to do is just start. Okay. So the link is in the description. Grab it, start using it this week, and let me know how it goes. And I'm going to let you know how it goes for me too. So here's our recap. Deep content, the teaching content, is going to help you build know, like, trust. And it works especially well on know and trust. But in order to connect and in order to get that sale, we're going to have to build that like part too. And so, yes, keep teaching, but balance it with content that shows your human side at least once a week. Okay. Because I think in a sea of experts shouting for attention, I really believe you've got to deliver on all three of those know, like, and trust in order to get clients. So grab that content generator. It is in the description if you're listening on YouTube. It's in the show notes if you're on a podcast platform. And if you got something from today, I would be really grateful if you would like and subscribe. I hope you have a great week. And until next time, I'll see you later, alligators.